The cold released her slowly, like hands letting go of something precious. Dr. Kira Voss felt her lungs burn as they remembered how to breathe. Her eyes opened to darkness, then to dim emergency lights casting red shadows across the cryo-chamber. Something was wrong. The lights should have been white, welcoming. The air should have been warm. She pulled herself from the pod, her muscles weak and shaking. The chamber was silent except for the hum of her own pod's systems. Around her, dozens of other pods stood dark and lifeless. No lights, no humming, no people waiting to wake up. Kira stumbled to the chamber's main console. Her hands moved automatically, typing commands she had memorized 2 centuries ago. Except, it hadn't been 2 centuries. The screen flickered to life, and the numbers made her stomach drop. 847 years. She had been asleep for 847 years. "This isn't possible," she whispered. The mission plan called for 200 years of travel. They should have reached the colony world of New Terra. There should have been cities by now. Children who had never seen Earth. A new human civilization. Among the stars. The ship's AI activated with a tired electronic voice. "Dr. Voss, you are awake. This is unexpected. What happened? Where is everyone? All other cryopods failed. Main power collapsed in year 253 of the journey. Your pod was in the research section, with independent power reserves. You are the sole survivor of the Prometheus dawn." Kira felt the words hit her like physical blows. Sole survivor. Everyone else was gone. The 3,000 colonists, the scientists, the families with children who were supposed to build a new world, all dead. What about New Terra? What about Earth? Give me communication status. The AI paused, and Kira realized it was hesitating. Machines didn't hesitate, unless they had bad news. There are no human signals anywhere in detectable space. Earth's transmissions ceased approximately 642 years ago. All colony worlds are silent. The chamber suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Kira gripped the console to keep from falling. That's not possible. Humanity had 50 colony worlds. Billions of people. We can't all just be gone. I have been monitoring alien communications. Shall I translate? Yes, immediately. The speakers crackled, and strange sounds filled the chamber. Clicks, whistles, harmonic tones that made her teeth hurt. Then the AI's translation overlay began, converting the alien speech into words she could understand. The human sectors remain under confluence protection. The nature preserve on their homeworld shows good recovery. It has been 600 years since the failed species destroyed themselves. They serve as a reminder of what happens when primitives gain technology too quickly. Kira felt rage burn through her shock. Failed species. Primitives. Destroyed themselves. She pulled up the ship's external sensors and saw a view that confirmed her worst fears. They were in human space. Or what used to be human space. But the star charts were wrong. Stations that humans built now had alien designations. Territory that belonged to Earth colonies now showed markers for something called the confluence. She spent hours digging through the ship's damaged records. The logs were corrupted, but she pieced together a story. Humanity had made first contact with the confluence 60 years after the Prometheus dawn launched. At first, there was excitement. Humanity joined a galactic civilization of dozens of species, but then the records became fragmented. Economic crashes, political manipulation, wars between human factions that made no sense. And then, silence. The galaxy thought humanity destroyed itself, but Kira had spent her career studying alien psychology and human history. She knew what extinction looked like naturally, and this wasn't it. Someone had killed humanity. Someone had erased them and taken everything they built. She accessed the ship's restricted military archives, using her command codes. The Prometheus Dawn wasn't just a colony ship. It was also carrying the complete strategic database of human military history. Every war, every battle, every tactical innovation from ancient Sumer to the 23rd century. And more importantly, it carried the psychological profiles of every alien species encountered during first contact. Humanity had met 17 alien species before the silence. Kira had written many of the profiles herself. She knew how they thought, what they feared, what motivated them. She knew their weaknesses. A plan began forming in her mind. It was insane. It was probably impossible. But Kira had always specialized in impossible problems. That's why they had sent her to New Terra in the first place. She was supposed to negotiate with any alien species they encountered, to ensure humanity's new colony could defend itself through understanding rather than weapons. She pulled up the psychological profile for the species mentioned most in the alien communications. The Gen Collective. Crystalline beings who valued order, harmony, and predictability above all else. They seemed to be the dominant power in the confluence now. Kira smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. The Gen Collective valued predictability. They thought humanity was dead, extinct, a closed chapter in galactic history. They had forgotten humans entirely, filed them away as a failed experiment in uplifting primitive species. They had no idea that one human had survived. One human who knew exactly how they thought. One human who carried 800 years of military strategy in a ship's computer. One human who had nothing left to lose and every reason to make the galaxy remember why humanity had scared them enough to destroy. She began working on the ship's systems, planning her next moves. The galaxy had forgotten humanity. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake was thinking that one human couldn't matter. Kira Voss was about to teach them differently. 3 months later, Kira floated in the small scout ship she had rebuilt from the Prometheus Dawn's damaged shuttle bay. She watched a Gen Collective cargo vessel drift past, its crystalline hull reflecting starlight in geometric patterns. Beautiful and cold, just like its makers. She had spent the months learning everything about the new galaxy. The confluence controlled thousands of systems, governed by strict rules that never changed. Every species had its place, its role, its boundaries. The Gen Collective made sure nobody stepped out of line. There had not been a war in 400 years. There had also not been any real progress in 400 years. The galaxy had become a museum, Kira realized. Safe, organized, and completely dead inside. She had hacked into the Confluence's information networks easily. Their security was designed to stop outsiders from getting in. But it assumed everyone inside followed the rules. Humans never followed rules they didn't understand. That was one of the things that made them dangerous. The historical records told her what really happened to humanity. The Gen Collective had been worried from the moment humans joined the Confluence. Humans asked too many questions. They innovated too quickly. They refused to accept their assigned role as a minor species. Within 50 years, human technology was advancing faster than species that had been spacefaring for millennia, so the Gen had acted. They crashed Earth's economy by manipulating trade agreements. They funded extremist groups on colony worlds. They spread propaganda that made humans fight each other instead of uniting. And when humanity was weak and divided, they stepped back and let nature take its course. Then they rewrote the history, making it look like humanity's self-destruction was inevitable. Kira felt cold rage every time she read those records. Her species hadn't failed. They had been murdered by beings who were afraid of competition. She began her campaign carefully. The Gen Collective thought in patterns. They believed the universe operated on mathematical principles that could be calculated and controlled. Kira decided to give them something they couldn't calculate. The first incident happened at a Gen research station. Scientists arrived one morning to find their computers displaying a message in ancient English, a dead language none of them could read. It took them days to translate it. The message said simply, "We remember." A week later, a Gen diplomatic ship found its navigation systems rewritten. Instead of going to their destination, they arrived at the coordinates where Earth's moon had been. Another message waited in their systems. You took everything. We will take it back. Kira moved like a ghost through confluence space. The scout ship was small enough to avoid most sensors, and she had learned to mask its signature using techniques from old Earth submarine warfare. She struck at symbols, not infrastructure. Gen cultural centers found human music playing from their speakers. Secure military facilities discovered their access codes changed to famous dates from human history. She never hurt anyone. That wasn't the point. The point was to make them afraid. And it worked. The Confluence began investigating. Who was behind these incidents? Some thought it was a rogue artificial intelligence. Others whispered about human survivors hiding somewhere in the galaxy. The Gen Collective insisted it was impossible, but Kira could see the cracks forming in their certainty. The paranoia spread. The Gen started cracking down on member species, demanding increased security, investigating anyone who acted suspiciously. Species that had lived peacefully under Confluence rule for centuries suddenly found themselves treated like criminals. Kira watched it all from the shadows, adjusting her strategy. She studied the Confluence's members, looking for allies. Most species seemed content with the status quo. They had forgotten what freedom looked like. But one species stood out. The Keshari. Reptilian beings with deep cultural values around honor and memory. According to the records, they had been humanity's only real friend in the Confluence. They had spoken against the economic warfare targeting Earth. They had offered sanctuary to human refugees. The Gen had punished them for it, stripping away their voting rights and reducing their territory. Kira found a Keshari trade ship operating near the edge of their space. She watched it for days, studying the crew's patterns. The captain was old, probably had been alive during humanity's time. That was who she needed. She intercepted their communications and sent a message in Keshari formal script, which she had learned from the database. I am the last human. I seek the ones who remembered us. I seek Alaman. The response came faster than expected. If you are real, prove it. Meet us at these coordinates. Come alone. It could be a trap. The Keshari might have betrayed the information to the Gen. But Kira had learned something important during her months of watching the Confluence. They had grown comfortable. They had forgotten that sometimes you had to take risks. She set course for the coordinates, a dead system far from any major trade routes. As she approached, she saw the Keshari ship waiting. It was old, showing signs of battle damage that had been repaired, but never fully erased. A ship with history. Kira opened a channel. My name is Dr. Kira Voss. I was born on Earth in the year 2247. I have been asleep for 847 years. I am the last human, and I intend to make the galaxy remember what they did to my species. There was a long silence. Then, a rough, aged voice responded in heavily accented English. Dr. Voss, I am Captain Thress. I knew humans once. Before the end, I spoke against what was done to your people. If you are truly the last, then you carry a heavy burden. I carry more than that, Kira said. I carry 8 centuries of human military strategy and the psychological profiles of every species in the Confluence. I know how they think. I know what they fear. And I am going to use that knowledge. Another pause. What do you want from us? I want you to remember what humans really were, not the propaganda version the Gen created. I want you to help me show the galaxy the truth. And then I want to teach you something humanity knew that the Confluence has forgotten. What is that? Kira smiled. That the future doesn't have to look like the past. That change is possible. That one person, or one species, can make a difference, if they're willing to fight for it. Captain Thress made a sound that might have been a laugh. You want to start a revolution with one human and one old Keshari? I want to start it with an idea, Kira corrected. Revolutions always start with ideas. The people come later. You are either very brave or very insane, Dr. Voss. I'm human, Kira said. We've always been both. Captain Thress brought Kira to a hidden station in an asteroid field that even the Confluence didn't know about. There, she met 30 Kashari who still remembered humanity with respect rather than the Gen's propaganda. They were old. Most of them veterans of a time when the galaxy had been different, but there were young ones too. Kashari who had grown up hearing stories about humans from their elders. Stories about beings who dreamed impossible dreams, and sometimes made them real. Stories about a species that never accepted being told something couldn't be done. Kira stood before them in the station's central chamber and told them the truth she had discovered. She showed them the stolen Gen records, proving humanity had been deliberately destroyed. She watched anger spread through the room like fire. The Keshari valued honor above almost everything, and what the Gen had done was the deepest dishonor imaginable. "What do you want us to do?" asked Thress. "We are one species, and we have already been punished for supporting humans once." "I want you to learn," Kira said. "The Gen Collective controls the galaxy because they convinced everyone that their way is the only way. Order. Hierarchy. Following the rules. But humanity knew something they've forgotten. Rules can be changed. Systems can be broken. And sometimes, chaos is exactly what you need." She began teaching them. Not just tactics, though those were important. She taught them how humans thought, how they approached problems from unexpected angles, how they used creativity as a weapon, how they turned weaknesses into strengths. The Kashari were natural warriors, but they fought with honor and direct confrontation. Kira taught them guerrilla warfare. Hit and run. Misdirection. Making the enemy fight the battle you choose, not the one they want. She showed them human history. Stories of small groups defeating empires through clever strategy rather than strength. Word spread through underground networks. Other species heard rumors about a human survivor teaching forbidden knowledge. Some came to learn. A few insectoid trill who had grown tired of their assigned role as laborers. Several gaseous Veen who wanted more than the limited research permissions the Confluence allowed them. Even 2 young Gen who had questions about their collective's version of history. The movement grew slowly, carefully. Kira knew they weren't ready for direct confrontation. They needed something bigger first. They needed to show the galaxy that the Gen's version of history was a lie. The plan came together over 3 months. The Gen Collective kept extensive archives on a world called Crystallis Prime. Every decision, every action, every piece of data from the last 1,000 years was stored there, including the true records of what they did to humanity. Kira knew they couldn't fight their way in. The archives were protected by arbiter units, the Gen's biomechanical enforcers. Each arbiter was 3 meters of programmed perfection, able to calculate optimal responses to any threat in milliseconds. They didn't sleep, didn't make mistakes, and had never failed to stop an intrusion. But they did follow patterns, and patterns could be exploited. Kira studied the arbiters for weeks through hacked surveillance systems. She noticed something interesting. The arbiters were perfect at responding to known threats, but they struggled with paradoxes. When faced with 2 equally optimal solutions, they hesitated for just a moment while calculating. She designed a virus based on human philosophy rather than computer code. It posed questions without clear answers. Moral dilemmas. Logical paradoxes. Things that made humans fascinating and frustrating to other species. The virus spread through the archive's security network. Not destroying anything. Just asking questions. If order creates suffering, is chaos more moral? Can a rule be wrong even if it is logical? Is preserving the past more important than creating the future? The arbiters' processing systems tied themselves in knots trying to answer. It only bought seconds, but seconds were enough. Kira's team slipped in during the confusion. They copied the historical records proving the Gen's crime against humanity. Then they did something bold. They broadcasted across every Confluence communication channel simultaneously. The galaxy learned the truth. Humanity hadn't destroyed itself. The Gen Collective had murdered an entire species because they were afraid of competition. They had rewritten history to hide their crime. They had built their perfect, orderly civilization on genocide. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some species refused to believe it, clinging to the Gen's version of events. But others began asking dangerous questions. If the Gen could do that to humans, what would they do to us? How much of the history we know is lies? The confluence fractured. Species that had accepted Gen leadership for centuries suddenly demanded explanations. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. The careful order the Gen had maintained began crumbling. Kira watched from the hidden station, feeling a mix of triumph and fear. She had wanted to wake the galaxy up, but revolutions were messy. People would suffer. Some might die. Was she responsible for that? Thress found her staring at the communications displays, watching the chaos spread. "You are having doubts," the old Keshari said. "It wasn't a question. I wanted justice," Kira said quietly. "But this could tear the galaxy apart." "The galaxy was already broken," Thress replied. "It was just a comfortable kind of broken. You showed everyone the cracks. What happens next is their choice." Before Kira could respond, alarms shrieked through the station. One of the younger Keshari ran into the chamber, eyes wide with fear. "The Gen have found us. A full arbiter fleet just entered the system. They're demanding we surrender the human." Kira pulled up the tactical display. 50 ships. Hundreds of arbiters. Led by a massive command vessel. The Gen weren't taking chances this time. Thress began shouting orders, preparing the station's defenses. But Kira knew the truth. They couldn't win this fight through strength. The Gen had calculated the odds and decided this was the moment to crush the rebellion before it spread further. But the Gen always made one mistake. They thought every problem could be solved with the right equation. They believed in optimal solutions and perfect tactics. They had forgotten that sometimes the best strategy was to break all the rules and do something completely insane. Kira began typing commands into the tactical computer, pulling up every piece of human military history she had. Sun Tzu, Alexander, Patton, Napoleon. Every commander who had won impossible battles through sheer audacity. She needed to think like them now. A communication came through from the Gen fleet. A crystalline face appeared on screen. Geometric and emotionless. "I am Supreme Architect this. Surrender the human called Kira Voss. And the rest of you will be permitted to live. Resist, and we will eliminate all life in this system." Kira stepped in front of the camera. "I am Kira Voss. I'm the last human. You destroyed my entire species because you were afraid we wouldn't follow your rules. Now you want to destroy everyone who learned the truth. But here's the thing about humans that you never understood." She smiled, and there was no fear in her eyes. "We never learned to surrender." She cut the transmission and turned to her allies. "I have a plan. It's dangerous, probably insane, and might not work. But it's very human. Are you with me?" Thress showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "I did not live this long by playing it safe. What do you need?" The Gen fleet approached the asteroid station in perfect formation. Supreme Architect Thys watched from the command vessel, analyzing tactical data with satisfaction. The human would die here, and with her, the dangerous ideas she spread, order would be restored. The mathematics of the situation were clear. Inside the station, Kira worked frantically. She had studied the Gen for months, memorizing every detail of their psychology. They valued harmony and coordination above all else. Their ships operated like a single organism, each vessel precisely aware of every other vessel's position and status. It made them incredibly efficient. It also made them predictable. She had loaded every speaker in the station with something the Gen had never experienced. human war songs, battle hymns from 1,000 different cultures, drums and guitars and voices screaming defiance into the void. She timed it perfectly, broadcasting at full power just as the Arbiters launched their assault. The Gen communication channels flooded with chaos. Their harmony-based coordination systems tried to filter out the noise, but couldn't. Every frequency was filled with human voices singing about death and glory and refusing to submit. The Arbiters hesitated for just a moment. Their perfect synchronization disrupted. That moment was all Kira needed. The station's hidden weapons, salvaged and repaired from a dozen different species technologies, opened fire. Not at the ships, but at the asteroids around them. Explosions created debris clouds, turning the battlefield into chaos instead of the clean, calculated engagement the Gen expected. Thys felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Frustration. The human was making the battle messy, unpredictable. Every tactical calculation had to be recalculated as conditions changed. His fleet's advantage in firepower meant nothing when they couldn't coordinate properly. But frustration was not defeat. Thys ordered his ships to fall back and regroup. They would clear the debris field methodically and crush the station through overwhelming force. The humans' tricks only delayed the inevitable. Kira watched the Gen ships reposition and knew her first gambit had only bought time. She initiated Phase 2 of her plan. Across the confluence, sleeper programs she had planted during her months of hacking activated simultaneously. Gen facilities found their systems displaying images from human history. Not battles or weapons. Families, children playing, art, music, scientists making discoveries, lovers holding hands. Everything that humanity had been before the Gen destroyed them. And with those images came a message that broadcast across every channel. We were like you once. We had families, dreams. We wanted to live in peace and explore the stars. The Gen Collective took that from us because we asked questions they didn't want answered. Look at what they're doing now. If one human survives and tells the truth, they'll destroy an entire station of people who helped her. How many of you will they kill to keep their secrets? Kira wasn't just fighting a battle. She was fighting for hearts and minds. She needed the galaxy to see the Gen as they really were, not the benevolent leaders they pretended to be. The effect was immediate. Across confluent space, protests grew into riots. Species that had quietly accepted Gen rule began openly defying it. Even some Gen began questioning. The younger ones, especially, who had never known the time before the perfect order, wondered if maybe the old ways had problems worth examining. Thys saw the reports flooding in and felt something new. Fear. Not for himself, but for the collective. Everything they had built over 1,000 years was fracturing because one human refused to die quietly. He opened a direct channel to the station. Dr. Voss. You cannot win this battle. Even if you destroy this fleet, more will come. The collective will never stop until you are eliminated. Kira appeared on screen, and Thys was struck by how much defiance one being could contain. That's where you're wrong, Thys. I've already won. I didn't need to destroy your fleet. I needed to show the galaxy what you really are. You're so afraid of chaos that you'll commit genocide to prevent it. You call it maintaining order. Everyone else will call it tyranny. Order is necessary, Thys said. Without it, civilizations collapse. Humanity proved that. We proved nothing except that we scared you, Kira shot back. You know what humanity's real crime was? We believed tomorrow could be better than today. We believed that asking why was more important than accepting because I said so. You've created a galaxy that will never grow, never change, never become anything more than it is right now. That's not peace, Thys. That's extinction in slow motion. Her words hit something in Thys's consciousness. The Gen Collective shared thoughts across vast distances. He could feel others listening, questioning. Young Gen who had never considered that their perfect society might be flawed. Old Gen who remembered a time when their species had been explorers and dreamers before they became enforcers of order. You offer only chaos, this said, but his certainty was cracking. I offer choice, Kira corrected. The choice to question, to dream, to fail, and try again. You took that from humanity, and you've been taking it from every species in the confluence for centuries. How many innovations have been suppressed because they didn't fit the plan? How many brilliant minds have been wasted because they thought differently? You created stability, but you killed progress. Thys felt his fleet's arbiters waiting for orders. He could give the command right now. They would destroy the station and everyone in it. The human's voice would be silenced. But across the confluence, billions were watching. They had seen the proof of the Gen's crime. They had heard Kira's words. If he killed her now, she would become a martyr. The revolution would spread faster than ever. But if he didn't kill her, the collective's authority was broken. Species would rebel. The careful order would collapse into chaos. The mathematics of the situation had become impossible. There was no optimal solution. For the first time in his long life, Supreme Architect Thys didn't know what to do. The human had given him a problem that couldn't be calculated away. Kira saw his hesitation and pressed her advantage. You have a choice right now, Thys. Kill me and prove that the Gen Collective rules through fear. Or let me live and prove that the galaxy can change. Either way, you've already lost control. But one path leads to civil war. The other leads to a chance at something better. And if I let you live, what then? Thys asked quietly. What do you want, Dr. Voss? Kira smiled, but it was sad rather than triumphant. I want my species back. But since I can't have that, I want to make sure no one ever forgets them. I want humanity's legacy to be the questions we asked and the changes we inspired. I want the galaxy to remember that progress requires the freedom to challenge what is, in hopes of what could be. Thys made his decision. He gave the order for his fleet to withdraw. His fellow architects would call it weakness, perhaps even betrayal, but he had lived long enough to recognize truth when he heard it. The human was right. The collective had created order at the cost of everything that made life worth living. As the Gen fleet turned away, Kira felt her legs give out. She had gambled everything on understanding alien psychology, and somehow it had worked. The station erupted in cheers, but she could barely hear them over the pounding of her heart. Thys helped her to a chair. You threatened him with something worse than death, the old Kashari said with approval. You threatened him with being wrong. I just hope it was enough, Kira whispered. The galaxy burned with change. Not the destructive fire of war, but the transformative fire of ideas whose time had come. The confluence shattered into 100 factions. Some clung to the old ways, demanding the Gen Collective restore order by any means necessary. Others embraced the chaos, experimenting with new forms of government and society. Kira traveled between worlds on the repaired Prometheus Dawn, no longer hiding. She became something the galaxy had never seen. A teacher without an empire, sharing knowledge without demanding loyalty. Everywhere she went, beings asked the same questions. What were humans really like? What did you believe in? How did you think? She answered honestly. Humans were flawed, contradictory, brilliant, and foolish in equal measure. They created art and destroyed themselves over differences. They reached for the stars while hurting each other over scraps. They were capable of incredible compassion and terrible cruelty, often in the same day. But the one thing we never did, she told an audience of mixed species on a Kashari world, was accept that things had to stay the way they were. We believed in tomorrow. Tran, we believed in tomorrow. And that belief, more than any technology or weapon, is what made us dangerous. The Gen Collective fractured. Conservative architects tried to maintain control, but younger Gen had tasted doubt and couldn't forget it. They formed the reform movement. arguing that the collective had lost its way centuries ago. Civil debates turned into civil wars. Crystal ships fought crystal ships, while the rest of the galaxy watched in shock. This found himself leading the reformers. He reached out to Kira for advice, and they met on a neutral station. The old architect looked at the last human with something that might have been respect. "You destroyed us," he said simply. "I saved you," Kira corrected. "You were dying slowly, turning into something rigid and lifeless. Now you have a chance to grow again. Many will die in these conflicts," this said. "That blood is on both our hands." "Yes," Kira agreed, not looking away. "That's the cost of change. I won't pretend otherwise." But the cost of not changing was watching the galaxy slowly suffocate. "I chose the hard path because it was the only path forward." They worked together to establish what Kira called the Prometheus Accords, a new framework for galactic civilization built on principles humanity had died defending. Freedom to question authority, protection for dissenting voices, the right to fail and try again. Systems of government chosen by people, not imposed from above. Not everyone accepted the accords. Wars were fought. Species struggled with new freedoms they didn't know how to use. It was messy and painful and uncertain, but it was also alive in a way the old confluence had never been. 2 years after the confrontation at the asteroid station, Thys came to Kira with news that made her heart stop. A Gen research team exploring old human space had found something. Hidden facilities scattered across a dozen systems. Inside were thousands of cryogenic chambers, all still functioning. Emergency backup systems that humanity had placed as insurance against extinction. Inside those chambers were human embryos, genetic diversity from across Earth's population, everything needed to resurrect humanity. Kira stood in front of the first facility they opened, staring at rows of frozen chambers stretching into darkness. Her hands shook. She could bring her species back. There were enough embryos here to create a new human civilization. She wouldn't be alone anymore, but she would also be playing God. These new humans would grow up in a galaxy she had changed. They would never know Earth, never know the history that made humanity what it was. Would they be human in any meaningful sense? Or would they be something new, shaped by alien civilizations? "What will you do?" Thys asked quietly. Kira thought about the human she had been. Before the long sleep, she had been arrogant, certain in her beliefs. 800 years and countless mistakes had taught her humility. She had started this journey wanting revenge. Now she just wanted to do right by the memory of her species. "I can't make this decision alone," she said finally. "It affects the whole galaxy." She called together representatives from every species, every faction. They debated for months. Some argued humans should be resurrected as a gesture of justice. Others feared a new human civilization would destabilize the fragile new order. Still others questioned whether they had the right to make this choice at all. In the end, they agreed to a compromise. A small number of embryos would be gestated and raised by volunteers from multiple species. These new humans would grow up in a multi-species community, learning about both their heritage and their new reality. They would be humanity's children, but also the galaxy's children. Kira watched as the first baby was removed from artificial gestation. A girl with dark skin and curious eyes that focused on Kira's face. She held the infant carefully, feeling the weight of species survival and personal responsibility. "Hello," she whispered. "I'm Kira. I'm human. Like you. I'm the last of the old humanity, and you're the first of the new. I can't tell you what to be or what to believe. That's something you'll have to figure out on your own, but I can tell you what humans always believed." She paused, feeling tears on her face for the first time in years. "We believed tomorrow could be better than today. We believed in asking questions even when the answers scared us. We believed that every person matters, no matter how small or weak they seem." The baby made a small sound, and Kira laughed despite her tears. Yes, you're going to be trouble. All humans are. That's our gift to the galaxy. She handed the baby to the multi-species council that would raise her. They would teach her about humanity's past, but also about the present they were building together. This child would never be truly human in the way Kira was, shaped by Earth and its history. But maybe that was okay. Maybe this was humanity's real legacy. Not a species, but an idea that could spread to anyone willing to embrace it. A month later, Kira returned to the Prometheus Dawn. She had spent 3 years awake, changing a galaxy and bringing her species back from extinction. She was exhausted in ways that went beyond physical tiredness. She had done what she set out to do. Humanity would be remembered now, not as a failed species, but as the catalyst that freed the galaxy from stagnation. She prepared her cryopod, programming it to wake her in 500 years. By then, the new humans would be adults. The galaxy would have had time to adjust to the changes she forced upon it. Maybe things would have stabilized into a new order, or maybe chaos would still reign. Either way, it would be a future that people chose, not one imposed on them. Before entering the pod, she recorded a final message. It would be broadcast across the galaxy after she was asleep. Her last words, to a civilization she had transformed. My name is Dr. Kira Voss. I am the last human of the old world. By the time you hear this, I will be asleep, trusting you to build the future without me. I want to leave you with one final thought. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology or our weapons. It was our refusal to accept that things had to stay the same. We believed in progress. We believed in hope. We believed that one person, asking the right questions at the right time, could change everything. She smiled at the camera. The galaxy forgot humanity once. You let entire species be erased because it was convenient for those in power. I made sure you'll never forget us again, not because I want worship or monuments, but because I want every being, from now until the stars go cold, to remember that change is possible, that tomorrow can be different from today, that asking why is never a crime. The new humans growing up among you will carry our name. But the real humanity, the thing that made us who we were, isn't in their DNA. It's in the questions they ask, the dreams they chase, the rules they break when those rules are unjust. That's the humanity I want you to remember. She entered the cryopod and set the timer. As the cold embraced her again, her last conscious thought was simple. She had been one human against a galaxy. It should have been impossible. But humans had always specialized in impossible things. 500 years from now, she would wake to see what kind of future her actions had created. She hoped it would be better than the past. But more importantly, she hoped it would be different. Because the moment you stopped changing, stopped growing, stopped questioning, was the moment you started dying. The galaxy had forgotten humanity once, but Kira Voss had made certain they would never make that mistake again. Not just because humans had survived, but because the ideas humanity represented had spread to every species willing to embrace them. As her consciousness faded, she smiled. The last human of the old world, sleeping peacefully, trusting that the galaxy she had changed would build something worth waking up for. The cryopod sealed shut. In 500 years, the galaxy would have its answer. But for now, Dr. Kira Voss rested, her work finally done.